Welcome to the briefing room. In today's episode, we speak with Judd McCann, supply chain and defence tech specialist. We discuss his background as a contractor for the British Ministry of Defence and how his experience in Middle Eastern conflict zones led him to develop the first AMSA exempt autonomous vessel in Australia. We touch on the reality of high-stakes contracting, including the 72-hour turnaround times for US Navy bids and why a strong network is often more valuable than the product itself. We also talk about strategic pathways for Australian founders entering the US and the UK markets and the critical importance of being battle-tested before knocking on the door of a global prime. Let's dive in. Welcome to the briefing room. Whether you're in defence, investing into the future, or simply curious about how great ideas become reality, this is your mission briefing. Let's get started. Judd, I am pleased to welcome you to the briefing room. Super excited to have our discussion today. I've heard you speak a lot of times on some of the events that we've had before. So Breach Point is one of them, which is where we get to talk about market entry into the US and you get to share your insight there. But so maybe let's talk about your background, what it is that you do, what's your role that you play now?
Sure. Well, thank you for having me. Like I said earlier, wild to be on the same platform as some of the other guests that you've had. So humbled, grateful. So right now, working in Austrade, which is a three-pillared business. Basically, one avenue is working into defense advisories, pathways to the US, specifically federal government, how to, where to, when to. Then we've got our robotic platform, the USV platform, which is a dual-purpose platform, basically an autonomous boat that collects data, inshore data and littoral purpose data. Mm-hmm. And the third avenue is general consulting and marketing, not really marketing, consulting on specific market areas, oil and gas to defence, Australian purpose. So
what's your time split between those three areas?
So US starts 4 a.m. So we get going at 4 to 8, and then 8 turns to Australian focus work, and then sort of 6 to 8 again that night is focused on whatever was outstanding and whatever needs to be ready for the next contracts the next day.
Yep.
So we're still working on some US Navy contracts, which take a lot of attention because when you're working for on contract and doing bids for US Navy or whoever, it's a short turnaround. You don't get 2 weeks to build your quote. You get 72 hours. You get 12 hours. So either you know what you're doing and you have the contacts in that space to pull it off, or you don't. So It's a rapid snip. Okay, you are free to go now. Thanks, because you can't get it in 12 hours.
Yeah, right.
You don't know your area, so you're gone. Yeah.
We'll go back a couple of steps and then I really want to drill down on that part and what it's actually like to work on contract with the states or anything in the defence space. So how did you even get to working in defence? What was your background? What did you study? What was your career pathway to get to this point?
Wonderful process of now you are here.
One day you woke up and thought, hey, this is where I am.
Yeah, I get a lot with this accent and then talking about US contracting and working for MOD, British Defence, and then ADF. And you're like, well, how does this work out? So basically, a teenager moved to the US. And then from there was 9/11. So lived that part of life, went to the UK, started up there. The Iraq War had sort of just been on a couple of years. Then there was the London bombing, buses, and then landed up being involved in something. So my security interviews are always fascinating.
Yeah, I bet.
Because they're like, what's happening now? Where were you? Why were you? And what?
So what were you doing at those in that era? Were you post-university?
I was lifeguarding, a professional lifeguard for a while. I was doing whatever odd jobs so that I could pay for studies and while I was studying up and get across. Then from the UK, I was signed up under a British ministry contract and did all my deployments through the Middle East under the British MOD.
Yes.
As a contractor, fulfilling pretty much similar types of things that we do now, just more conflict. So in the middle of
still
everything
defense,
that's going on.
So it was
Defense.
always been an interest for you?
Yeah.
Was that your aim to move into defence?
I very purposefully try to stay away from it, actually.
Why purposefully?
So when I was in the US, I wanted to do ROTC programs so that you can get funded or sponsored college because the US college is expensive, right?
Yes.
So I was like, right, great. Went to the Marine sign-up station, got in there. You have to do your 3 tests, and first your physical and mental, and then there's a whole verbal section. It takes about 8 months to a year. And as it was coming into be, 9/11 happened.
Right.
And I was like, I'm not doing this. I'm not finishing this. I don't want to land up at someone else's war.
Yes.
And I was like, no, I wanted to study cheap, Anyway, 4 years later, I spent 4 different tours going in and out of that place anyway. So it just seems to be like you're in and then you're out for a bit, then you're back again. So now I've just given in and stayed where I'm supposed to be, I suppose. Yeah.
And so when you were in the UK, what were you working in there? What were you?
Engineering design was a portion of
Is that what you studied, engineering?
I have studied engineering. So ComSci, engineering, CFIM, so financial, postgrad, and then PMP posts as well. But at the time, I was doing design work for people with disabilities. So in their wheelchairs, then you could create and design some sort of exercise equipment for their rehabilitation. So I'd go to their physios with them to different areas. And the university at the time was like, well, that's great. You could do that. And I mean, it's rudimentary stuff. It was like, we'll put a breadboard on here and we put some springs on there.
Which uni did you end up at after all that?
Finished all with UniSA.
Okay. Yeah. So that's when you came here.
No, it's a SAFA version.
Oh, sorry. Okay, right. Yeah, okay.
I think I took all the credits from everywhere and went there. And I was like, well, I've got this long list of stuff. What can I finish with here? And they were like, well, just do these subjects and you're good.
Okay.
Yeah. So I studied up there.
Well, when did you make it here to Australia? What led you?
After my last trip back from the desert, last R&R we went, a friend and myself came down and we did a visit of all the cities. We went all the way around, 10 days in each one or something like that. Yeah, got to Brisbane and I was like, hello, this feels good.
It felt like a place to stay.
And then, one more tour and I went back to South Africa to go like see it and kind of be there and be like, yeah. And realized that Australia was more my fit.
Yeah, right. And then and what developed from there was that, when did you actually start your company?
2017. So I came here, went to oil and gas, ultrasonics. So just integrity inspection engineering. So ultrasonics is a way of basically like you do for pregnancy scans and that, except on pressure vessels and pipelines and that type of stuff.
Right.
So great industry, good industry. And then, started my own thing with ROVs for underwater inspections and then the boats.
But you were working as a contractor and then thought, I could do this myself. I'm just trying to unpack the decision where you go, hang on a minute, I could do this for myself.
Yeah, working as a contractor and then you think you could do it for yourself, but I wasn't doing those areas. I was rather trying to do the things that I was interested in for myself while working and putting in the time for who was paying me.
Got it.
So the ROV work was interesting because you're under.
But the requirement was from the farm, for example, this is what we need to measure, and you
they wanted a volume.
Okay.
They wanted to see how deep their dam was,
right?
And then from there, it started going to volumes and tailings dams and mining and now littoral purpose, which is, from if you think about the movies, any D-Day. Normandy Beach, they need to know what the conditions are like from where the ships stop to where the people start on the beach. What's that like? Mapping it. So before it was divers or they'd have little boats with zodiacs and someone creating maps. And now we can just send these out and they can map it up.
So what do they look like? For anyone who has no idea what we're talking about size-wise,
they're
capacity?
About 60 inches long.
60 inches long?
Yeah, 1.4 meters long.
Sure.
Half a meter wide.
So they're not big?
No.
Okay.
These aren't big. I mean, you get other guys that have created huge ones, like the Blue Bottle and Oculus, Saronic.
They're the ones we tend to hear about more or see. So
their ones are massive, but these ones are purposefully little. So it's one guy can carry them, one guy put them out. They're autonomous, so you just give them a safe working environment to let them go and they'll operate in there. And I see they're cheap, so if you lose one, it's not a big deal. Yeah.
So you started doing more of that. Then obviously you got noticed and other people wanted to utilise these for their own projects.
Yeah. Well, it started off as a service. We were doing services for surveyors and services for other people. And then they were using it to sort of test the market so that they could gain business traction with their customers, and then they'd want to buy one themselves. So we aren't the only inventors of the thing. Americans have got them, Germans have got them. Everybody's made a version.
Yes.
If you can read and be bothered, you can pretty much do it.
Yes.
You just go out and make one yourself, boogie board and a depth sounder.
But, there's a difference between, I mean, you're someone who's like, okay, well, that's just easy. We just do this, this, and this. That is usually the gap from someone having the idea and then executing or having the capability to execute. There's usually an idea. But obviously there's no time between that thought and the execution. It just gets done. And that has led you to where you are now.
Yeah, well, that was one of the first tools. So once we'd got it to where we could get it, and then I thought, I could take this back to defence. There's a purpose for this. So sort of go back.
Did you have defence connections where you knew that this might have been a capability they were looking for?
Yeah. From what was then my past life.
Yes.
Engaged with different defence people and all my friends and, all still there. And then it was, instead of using clearance divers to map certain areas, and then it was search and rescue, for the crocodiles and things like that. Instead of putting the divers in that area, we can sort of build up different capabilities. Yeah, but then thinking about taking it back to defence was an area where we thought, well, let's give it a go.
Yes.
So went down to Sydney with one and literally carried it around the Indo-Pacific.
So was it Indo-Pack? Yeah, okay.
Indo-Pack. So we did one of the pitch events down there.
What year was this? Like how long ago when you first took a boat down?
2020, 2021,
Sure.
22, somewhere around there. Yeah. So 2
Were there
3
many
back.
autonomous? I mean, there would have been, but probably not like what
Not
we
small.
see now.
Yeah, all the big stuff.
Yes,
the
the
big
big
guys
stuff was
were
there.
around, and no little ones. And there's a
Did you have a
need for
stand,
each
or did
one.
you literally?
no, literally
you carried it.
carried it around. So we had the pitch. The AMDAs they
Yes,
put on
they
that
had the pitch,
pitch.
yeah.
So we did the pitch, and I purposely left it there on
Right.
the table. So
How
it was
good.
just there looking the whole like a day and a half, and then I found it. Someone had packed it in the back of the storage area, and then I was like, "Oh, this is mine. I'm just carrying it." And I was like, "Oh, I've got to show you this." Literally
Yeah.
carrying the boat around the show, and it worked. I mean, it gained interest. It moved around, and then at least I had a practical example of how I was going to try, like knowing firsthand where the obstacles are, because you can go to anyone in uniform and be like, "Look how cool this is,"
Yes.
and they're like, "Wow, that's cool," and then nothing.
Yes.
Because it's
They're
the
not
wrong
the person.
avenue.
Yeah, it's the wrong avenue. Or the wrong person, or it's not their department, or they're not the decision maker, or whatever
Yep.
the process is, right?
16 different loopholes, and then there's another document and someone else somewhere else, and then it's like that for all of them. Yeah.
So this is the perfect question, or a perfect place to start this line of questioning. So we do host these events called the Breach Point Market Entry or Access Panels, where we talk about how to actually get in and break into working with the Department of Defence, usually into the States.
Yeah.
Now, you're usually there sharing what the journey is like as a founder or somebody who has a product and how to navigate that. Yeah, you've actually navigated this yourself.
Yeah.
For example, with your boats in 2020, taking the actual boat down to Indo-Pac, which is a large conference. There are lots of other conferences, and in this space, in defence, we do encourage a lot of founders to go to them, to meet people, have a stand if you can, get involved. That was the start of your journey. Did you just have to navigate this yourself and work it out, trial and error, or were there people that you could speak to ask, who do I need to get in front of to showcase what the capability of these boats are?
Yeah, it's sort of two sides of the coin there,
Mhm.
because I'd already been engaged in military contracting for the British and the Americans and the French. So I knew from NATO's side how NAMSA does contracting. I knew the contracting avenues already, how that works. But you need to garner joint ventures. You need to gain acceptance from either a prime company or someone to partner with, someone to meet that has like, oh, you know what, that's really good. I think it will fit this program that we're developing, because one individual item can't take on this beast by itself. You need to engage and lock that in. So Yeah, while I did do that, and I was walking around with the art.
Is that just to get awareness?
It was an awareness
feedback?
thing.
Yeah, okay.
And a lot of times people want to practically touch something.
Yes, they
Because
want
you
to
can
physically
show
see
them a slide deck. If you want to touched it, kicked it, or actually let it drive around, they're like, oh, okay, that's what that is. Okay. Yeah. But then getting to the contracting. So while I was down there, I met up with a company, Kana, and then started working for them in pretty much, it's sort of morphed into
Did you know them before, and why was it them?
No, I didn't know them. Actually, a friend of mine, Chelsea, she started working for them in their First Nations to First Nations program, because that was the program that they initially came out to Australia to develop and work together, because they're a Native American firm. They want to engage more with First Nations, Indigenous Australians, and build that sort of avenue and those relationships and start with exporting foods and goods and arts and wine and coffee. And so, while everyone may have eventually landed up thinking Akana was a defense contracting pathway, it started with Indigenous First Nations partnership group.
Yeah, right.
But because of my history with military and history with contracting, that's where that relationship built up to. And then the Indo-Pacific it's a whole new area for a lot of people. And not knowing USFPI and all the acronyms and things like that. So that's sort of the value of running boss contracts and being involved in those kind of growths is where I added a bit of value to what they were doing.
Yep.
And then we also looked at how we could build up secondary supply chains for any US operators in Australia. There's no base. It's one of the only countries where there's no American base that's theirs.
Yes.
Everything is hosted. So when they need something, they've got the option of buying it themselves, but they also got to look at asking a host nation.
Okay.
And they might buy it. So there's a supply chain in it for that. Having a secondary supply chain, we wanted to bring in more Indigenous suppliers that have the capabilities to do that work, like in the territories, and transport lines from Adelaide up north and those type of things. And that was an avenue. And then, because of the native certifications that's in the US for federal contracting, things like 8As, hub zones, all these different procurement terms gives preference, and that's a whole different story, which I'm more than happy to talk about. There's buying rights and privileges and groups give you better weighted average. That started moving the 8A entity concept to bringing Australian companies that have interest in working in the US and working out how they would fit together in those groups. So who has to do what? Because it can't just be like, here's my 8A card, go broke.
Yes.
Yeah. No. You need to have quite a bit of tie-in, quite a bit of work, how it comes together, but it has to be together. And that's why the 8A program at the moment has had a few hiccups in the US, is because some of the groups that were entities gave it just pay us and do what you want under our card. Can't do that. So there's a lot of really good 8A companies that are out there that are doing quite a bit of pushes in Australia at the moment as well, still.
So how does a founder that's new to this environment navigate this? Finding out what are the organisations you need to talk to? Who do you partner with? How do you even meet primes? How do you navigate this from the start?
So there's not one way.
No.
But there is some ways that are tried and tested.
Yes.
So having a smaller Australian firm or a startup that wants to go and straight away tackle the big American beast and start selling, I get it, especially if you're selling into defense. ADF is a small number of people. It's not small in strength, small number of people. So their buying capacity is low. They don't need 1,000 drones. They don't need 10,000 boats. They only need as many as they need.
Yes.
The Americans will need 10, 100 times what the Australians will need. So sort of securing that sovereign manufacturing capability in Australia and then exporting and selling to the US, that's a great idea. And then you get export controls, and then you get ATAR, and then you get import tariffs, and then then you need to know
it's
what
like
you're doing.
Blocker.
It's like that Frogger game where you're jumping across and there's a log and you got to jump backwards and forwards. But going with someone who knows that path and has those contracting capabilities and acquisition capabilities and money, because you need a lot of it. People,
Yes.
if you've got the best gadget in the world, that's great.
It's great. You've still got to develop it.
Yeah, you still got to develop, but you
Produce
also,
it.
that's just your ticket to start the race. Then you get 3 years worth of compliance, how to work through FARS, federal acquisition regulations.
Yeah.
What is your contracting pathway? Who's your partnering company? They don't want to know you until you've gone through the right channel.
Mm-hmm.
So then how do you get to that? So it is a tricky way, but there are a lot of groups that do support. Some will say, I've done this myself. So, okay, I will help you through this program, but I want equity. So I know you're a startup. I know you're not growing as % or 2%. Not, some guys go pretty hard, like 25% straight off the bat. And that's fine. It's their network, the weight of their advisory capability, because you're bringing in people, you're bringing them straight into areas that doors already open.
Yep.
It's millions of dollars if the door isn't open.
So I've often talked about this, and I do mention the 3-year time frame. I've mentioned it a couple of times, even in episodes here, but in general. And now that's not something that I've personally experienced, a 3-year, let's just say if you wanted to get on contract in the States. But it does seem to be there's no shorter than that unless there's something really significant going on or some key partnerships that have already been established. Would you say that that's consistent time frame to look at? Like say
it's not
3
unfair.
years? It's not unfair.
Yeah, because you also have the sovereign manufacturer growth, US made first.
Yes.
How do you approach that? You're an Australian firm. Now they want you to go set up in the US. Even if you are foreign owned or foreign invested in, your product is not 100% US made. There are ways around that with foreign trade zones, with assembly of your product, because your IP would be held offshore.
Yes.
So no longer is it the top of the tree for US made. US made is contractor's number one rulebook. They just go, is it US made? No? Okay, that's fine. Let's go down the list.
Yes.
Where are you on this list? And then who else has got weight to it? And they can take more expensive stuff that's locally made in the US versus yours. As I was saying, having the best doesn't mean it's just giving you the ticket to get there. Commercially, if you're the best and you're the cheapest, you win.
Yes.
Not in defense
Not
or
in
federal
defense.
acquisition.
So how did you navigate that part? Where did you manufacture?
Oh, my stuff. So we're going to divide it now because my boats, for one line, are manufactured in Queensland. They're built here. They're used predominantly here in Indonesia and India. So that's where they are operating. I don't actually operate them in the US.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. That's good to know.
There's been a couple of
Clarify.
programs that the US have used it, but it's for like the Marshall Islands, or it's for Palau, or it's for somewhere else, like not a defense purpose. It's more humanitarian purposes.
Okay.
Transporting medical goods from island to island, little things, little
Yes.
jobs.
Yep.
Yeah.
Just talking about, the process and manufacturing, like you said, there is all this list. Is there a blueprint for this, or is it a matter of working it out, talking to people, plugging into various agencies? I mean, this is what we suggest.
Yeah.
And when we work with founders is what relationships have they already built? Who are they already connected to? If not, how can we plug them in
The
to those
relationship
connections?
building is the most important thing. So that's your network, right?
Yes.
And a lot of startups or guys come in saying, what's my idea? Why am I paying for this network?
Yes.
It's like, you know how expensive a network is?
Yeah.
Like, just an example, one of the guys in oil and gas, they wanted an introduction. They were like, yeah, sure, we'll give an introduction, but we want $50,000 for the introduction. And you're like, well, wait. He's like, yeah, my marketing bill was $1 million last year. So if you want an introduction, that's $50,000. I was like, yeah, makes perfect sense. And a lot of startup guys don't get that because it takes years to have trust and years to build up. And there's a lot of guys that'll look at a product and just be like, nah, before getting involved with it, it's not going to fly.
No.
So we've got guys that we know that we've operated with and working with in different areas, but they were in uniform, are now out, and they say, okay, well, they know what their divisions would need and how they would need it. So before they engage you'd have to pay them for their services, but before they engage in their services, they'll quickly just have a look and say yes or no.
Yeah,
and
right.
if it's a yes, then it's a deposit and you start working. That it's not quite lobbying, but it does feel a little bit like that.
Yes.
Yeah.
So. Have you ever seen it work any other way? In terms of, has there been anything completely that didn't operate this way and either has a bit of a fast track process to either getting on contract in the States or it's been a standout product that people just wanted to have or get their hands on? or just you can never
For
fast track
federal contracting, there's two major. So federal include defense as part of it. Defense, Homeland, Bureau of Indian Affairs, Forestry, all these different types of programs. They're all under the federal pocket. Under SBA programs, you're able to break away, I think it's 27% of the federal budget, the nearly $1 trillion that it is now. 20% of that, 27% of that is for small businesses.
Mm-hmm.
The quickest avenue to being able to get your product accepted is through the SBA CISA programs.
Yep.
Where if you have a joint venture with one of these smaller SBA companies or Super 8A companies or something along those lines, they have better avenue because the contracting office is getting to sign off that they're getting new tech, they've got a different pathway, and it's a small business. So they're supporting small businesses. That's part of their KPIs. It's their ticket to Hawaii. You're a contracting officer, you want to live in Hawaii or Japan. That's the big ticket. So that's the quickest way to get there is to have those sort of ticks, your purchasing mandates. And if you're able to get those together, that's the smoothest path. That's the quickest way. But you have to have joint ventures with those companies. They have to be the lion's share of those companies, and they have to do a certain amount of work. So you can't just have a blanket. Oh, that's the company we're going to go for. It needs to be in your market, in your position, in your person. Those acquisition lines, who their market is, what their history is, who they've worked with before. Because a lot of guys who've got reputations for just lambasting small companies with 1,000 documents and submissions, 5 submissions a day. And they're like, oh, they see his name come up and they're like, I don't want to get involved. They're just not reading it. They're not looking at it anymore because it's that person has just kept hitting them.
Mm.
Yeah.
It seems extremely complex, very long. It can probably be off-putting to somebody who's, a team and younger team, let's say, coming into the market.
Yeah. I suppose you have to think, why do you want to go to the US? Why do you want to sell your product to a federal program that's big? Where you've got the UK, that's another avenue, so European markets. Ukrainians have shown us their innovation is built by purpose on the ground.
Yes.
So whatever's happening on the ground is the result that they need right now. So whether it's chicken wire of the tanks to stop a drone or wheelbarrows to move people, it's whatever's needed right now. Where the US is this giant monster with bureaucracy and background and information, and you have to understand so many different avenues.
So many.
I mean, just the FARs by itself, it's like a telephone book for Sydney. And that's just the rules. You need to know all of those before you can,
Yeah.
So it's pretty intense. Where the other countries and other avenues for you to get going and get battle tested and get your product in there. Why America?
Why do you think America? And if it wasn't America, who would you suggest people to look at alternatively? As maybe UK?
Again, it's the
first?
buying power. I would say the UK first because AUKUS trade agreements, ATAR regulations, they're already in place.
Yep.
You don't need such extensive. You do need review for taking anything that you want as a dual purpose or defense product over to another country. It does need to go through a review process, but the UK is already under that ATAR AUKUS regulations. Still needs a review though. So if anyone's listening to this, don't get me in trouble. So you need your reviews done for export controls. But
so what would the time difference be? So if you're trying to get into
if the UK
US
have the money
or
to
the
buy,
UK market on comparison, what does that look like?
The honest truth is, it's what do you want to do? You're going to provide a service or you're providing a high-tech piece of equipment? If you're providing a high-tech piece of equipment, it's very much like a speedboat trying to dock with an airline carrier in the storm. It's not going to stop moving for you. It's not going to wait for you. You can't just throw a rope over the edge and now you're on. You have to align with everything to get in. And it could be quite quick if you've got the right partners and the right acquisition pathways and you've got that all tied up. But it also could be a huge failure and cost you a lot of money. The UK could be heaps easier.
Yeah. So do you work with people to try and do both, as in looking at different markets? We speak a lot about going to the States primarily. We haven't actually shared a lot of information about what it's like to maybe work with the UK or even Ukraine.
There's some of the products. There's one, an AI agnostic, AI agentic combat medic, a program that we've been working with that has CDSS medical and a whole bunch of additional programs. So this one specifically is they're hitting 99% on the Stanford benchmark test, where the nearest competitors are at 67%. And we've looked at Ukrainian markets. We've looked at NATO, looked at Israel. We looked at all these different combat areas to understand how the product should be operating in those regions and why each region should have slightly different twist to it. Fascinating to see. But you still need to get it through their procurement process. You still need to be registered. You need a in-cage number or a cage number. You still need to go through all the correct pathways, which is slow. But once someone in the UK has the money to do the investment and do the purchase, much quicker. With someone in the US who's not...
What is it? What is the difference? Like when you say much quicker in...
I would say 8 months to 15
So it's
months.
under 12 months. 12 month.
A year and a half. Under a year and a half.
Opposed to 3 years. US comparison on average.
But if you're going to the US and you're using a prime or you're using a partnering company or you're using some other avenue than you by yourself trying to knock at DOD's door, you're not getting in.
Yeah.
You have to have friends that will help you build up that pathway in. You can at least knock on their door and they might open it. They might be like, well, that's quite cool. Let's have a look.
Yes.
Yeah. And they've got budget looking for innovations. They're looking for new things. Not as much as American budgets.
Yes.
Because who has $1 trillion that they want to spend on federal acquisitions? So, but yeah.
Is it ever advantageous to go there first, let's say, if it takes 12 to maybe 18 months, which is not 3 years, in the UK first, prove capabilities, scale, and then tackle the US?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you seen anybody doing that? No?
It's a good idea. No, I haven't. I mean, everyone I've been working with specifically because of Austrade and the work we're doing with Austrade, getting companies to engage with the US market and moving across. Remember, this is only federal markets that I'm talking about, federal government markets. Open commercial markets is a whole different kettle of fish.
Yes.
I'm not referring to those markets. But for the federal government, there's assistance from Austrade and the commercial State Department back and forth between engaging, trying to build up. There's areas that are the Gulf and Mississippi where there's programs where they want you to bring their tech into their university programs and engage. Bastrop, Texas, which is another location where they're willing to talk to you even as far as what your income taxes should be and where you want to be and how do you want to operate and what your company is going to be like and how they can help you set up to be there because they want to attract manufacturing capability.
Yes.
So they do help speed things along quite a bit, but they're not helping you sell.
Yeah. Selling is the whole other.
Yeah.
What about programs? So if I'm going to take it back to somebody's got an idea, maybe they've got a prototype, they understand where they want to head, they understand there's a need for their technology or product or solution. Programs or accelerators, and now that can be UK, Europe, US. Have you seen anything that's been standout? We thought this is actually a really good pathway to get noticed or to further develop.
100%. So
what are some key
specifically
standouts?
for the US, I'll focus on because that's more
relevant. Well,
not irrelevant, but I just have more knowledge on them specifically. So there's groups like SOFWERX, AFWERX, Leslie Babbage.
Yes.
So she runs those programs, introducing new technology to all the services. Have a look at whatever the technology is on Tech Tuesdays. And so you're bypassing 10,000 people in a queue by getting to actually just show what you've got in front of the right people. They'll ask you questions immediately. And if there's something that
is interesting,
hits the mark, they'll jump on it.
Yeah.
Then CISA, which is the Army equivalent, near enough, but they also bring in funding. So they will, if you're a US firm, you're able to get funding towards a CISA program and they'll build it up. You get DARPA and DIU, so Defense Innovation and DARPA. They put more challenges out for you to pitch and present your equipment. Vulcan, which is an online, so they pitch you problems or they pitch you requirements that they're looking for. And UK is on Vulcan now too. I just seen an expression of interest from the UK using Vulcan. And they will, you put in all your answers. You have your IRL, TRL levels, maturity levels. They ask you pretty detailed questions. You write up a brief. They will review it and come back to you. So you've got first-person engagement. I know of that actually working. It's worked for me personally, but it's also worked for people that I'm working with, helping them go along to get involved in those programs. Very good.
Yeah, it's interesting. And look, everything that you've mentioned there is obviously they're familiar to us because we talk about them a lot and we know the people within those organisations, and we're in a DARPA partner, Beatonstone Venture Partners is. And so we're across what those opportunities look like, but we're continuously aware that it's still a big grey area, and we're happy to share as much information as possible. That's why we chat to people like you and host those types of events. What else could be useful, do you think? Is there is there a gap? Is there something missing that we could do here in Australia to help funnel some of these opportunities or make it a bit easier or reduce the time frame? Or do you think we're doing everything we can? Like we're doing a pretty good job. I think there's a lot of – you've got to plug in though. You've got to go out and seek the information. You've got to plug into the networks.
You can't sit in the cupboard and just be like,
no, you've got to be hungry.
No one likes my stuff. You have to get out there and be
This is the Australian
involved.
founder mentality opposed to, say, US founder mentality who are hungry, who are out there asking the questions, plugging themselves in.
In America, if you're not knocking on the door and phoning them 5 or 6 times
happening.
Until they're just not answered, they're not calling you back. You need to get out there. It needs to be immediate. Everything is immediate. Email them in the morning.
Yes.
No, do it right now. Right now, get it done. They might take a week or 2 weeks or never reply to you, but now is when you do it.
That's something that we do fall down on culturally here with our lack of urgency. We're more polite. Look, I would have said lazy, but if you want to say polite.
Polite's a good expression for the same thing.
I just don't think we've ever – well, we also haven't had the need to go faster. As in, it's not like, a house isn't on fire as such to have to push forward to get get results.
Well, there's just not enough. There's not as much competition. Where in the US, everything is competition.
Everything's competition.
So if you look at Sam.gov, for example, the amount of contractors on there that are bidding for different service jobs or bidding for all sorts of things, I think there's 2.8 million or something in the United States alone. And then in all the territories, something like another 12 or 15 million companies bidding on the same stuff that you are, that the same type of work that you're trying to go for. If you sit here and you're in Brisbane and it's lovely and it's sunny and I've got this great new thing, guarantee you're not the only person who thought about it. And there's another 10 million people out there doing the same thing. You've got to be quick. So
aside from going to the events, talking to people, plugging into the networks, all of that, how important is it to get on the ground over there?
Very.
Very.
It's the only way to actually get involved here. But if you want to be there, be there. Go across, go to the big shows, get involved with Austrade. They will set you up. They'll review what you're doing, but they want you to get involved with them. They want you to come out. How
helpful are they with the introductions and plugging you in?
Matt Catagallo, he's phenomenal.
Yeah,
he wants to bring in people. He wants to, and then he's also bringing in other entities like Akana was, bringing them this way. And making introductions here as well to try and facilitate that people can close out and actually get running.
Yeah.
Really good.
Yeah.
Austrade is for the US portion. Great. There's other organizations like SAM, so Society of American Military Engineers is a membership that I'm part of. And basically what that comes from, people think of it a lot heavier in the civils engineering space, which it is. But it's in the engineering space. So there's tech, there's STEM programs, there's all sorts of different programs. But basically bring the senior officers that are running the contracts, the MAC programs, any of the major contracts that are out there. Like at the moment, we've got Lieutenant Commander Geraguz who's the Roy Cup in Darwin. He's part of the membership as well. So people are able to approach and discuss what's happening. He can say what his needs are, what people should be sort of let go of that. This is what we want to focus on. Which standards are we looking to approach? So the more the detail behind what actually needs to happen for it to happen on the ground. And these type of programs enable that and facilitate that, because otherwise it's 100-page document that you got to filter through. And then you're not actually sure. But being part of different memberships where you're able to communicate directly and get information from other people who are in and or are doing it. It's huge. So that's what was a field chapter is now going to a full post in like 7 months. And the quickest post developments in Australia for that membership. Really quick. And it's growing. It's growing. And people have got the opportunity to come and either hear from people directly what's going on and other people in the industry. Because federal and defense programs all need a partnership. It doesn't
Yes.
matter what you've got. Even the primes partner with each other.
Yes.
It's the only
And no one's
way.
doing it on their own, right?
No one
Nobody's
can do
doing
it on their own.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what you've got. Even you need money.
Yes.
Yeah.
You need money.
Even if you look at it that way.
We all need money. So 12 months from now, April 2027, everything's moving very fast at the moment, and obviously in the global landscape is interesting right now. What do you think we would be talking about in this vein or in this context in terms of like the ecosystem, how to get into the market, how to get noticed, how to get your products up and running and backed and supported and scaled? What do you think will we be having the similar conversation 12 months from now, or do you think things might change? And if so, which part of that would change?
Gosh. I'm not one to get caught up on my tongue, but you got me. So, there's two different avenues of thought, right? So if the Middle Eastern wars continue to develop and there's engagement from Asia in those locations, there's going to be engagement in the Indo-Pacific. So war is going to be very, very different, and it's going to be right here. So if we look at it from that perspective, engagement is going to be very different for trying to sell your products, because it's going to be more looking at, this is our immediate issue. These are the types of things we need, and we need COTS. We need it off the shelf right now, today. Mm-hmm. We don't care about sell it, just whatever it is. You've got to be there. If none of that happens, hopefully, and it all simmers down and everyone can afford diesel again, and it keeps going, then we'll be pretty close. If we look at the current changes in procurement and acquisition policies within the Department of War, they've dramatically changed quite a few purchasing avenues. They've changed what used to be a PEO to a PA. So the project advisors, they've now got capabilities and authorities to spend a certain amount of money just outright, where before long chain of progress and discovery and recommendation and use cases. So
it's reduced in its time.
It's already reduced now under this
points.
administration. They've definitely shortened some avenues of purchases. Yeah. And hopefully in the US, it's going to be easier to engage and sell, but you still have huge competition. So you have to prove it. You have to prove the value, because you're going to remember everything that you're selling, it's not a knick-knack or a gadget. Literally either going to save someone's life or not.
Yes. And you better prove that. Yeah.
Your reliability is more important than your ego.
Yes.
Yeah. Which is quite important.
Very, very important. I'm glad that you mentioned that. So, look, there's such a wealth of information there, and I'm so grateful for you to share all of that. I think when we sort of unpack this, there'll be so many really interesting pieces and bite-sized bits of information. We're going to be able to
be like,
it's great. But when you step away from this work environment and your day-to-day tasks, I know you've got small kids. What do you do in your personal life to sort of relax, decompress, not think about what's happening globally?
No.
For enjoyment?
No, I love it. I love it outside. I'll happily go outside. Rivers, creeks, beds, if there's water and outside time, perfect. So everything else, all the noise can switch off, and you can just be there and be there, because there's nowhere else to be. You're there.
Exactly, yeah.
I think that's really important. I go for a paddle, have a look.
Have you taught the kids how to make autonomous boats yet?
Yeah, I have actually. Yeah.
That's a backyard project.
Well, then you'd help me. We need another one coming out. Come hold this and put that together. What's that?
Recruiting young.
Yeah. When they were smaller, we used to put them in and tow it behind one of the kayaks and just have them in there. And then I put motors to one and drive them.
Oh, my gosh.
And I thought, that's a great business idea. And then
you should put, no.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if it's safe to put small children in these autonomous boats.
Well, it's okay.
At least you tested it with your own, right?
If they can swim, it'll be all right. But insurance
is crazy. There's a few prerequisites, yeah.
If you try and get any new thing to go, insurance is such a crippler.
Yeah.
Such a crippler. It's crazy.
You know what I would like? I just want someone to motorise the trolleys you got to take at the beach with the kids with all the stuff in it.
Yeah.
Surely we can do that.
You can, definitely.
Why in Australia? You've seen them at the beach. Everyone's carrying all their gear across the sand. You've probably
great big beach wheels that never run the street.
The beach wheels are never big enough. Someone please help us out and motorise those things.
pretty confident they exist. The
well,
motorized
I haven't
versions.
seen them. Someone's not monetizing it well enough.
Yeah, just a little
We need. I just want a little boost on the handle to get across the sand.
We'll make one work for you.
Okay, I'll put it out to the ether.
Yeah.
Excellent, Judd. Thank you so much. A wealth of information, as I've said. I'm sure whoever listens to this will gain so much, but I really appreciate your time. Thank you for coming to the briefing room.
Perfect. Thank you very much for having me. I do appreciate it.
Awesome.
See where this goes.
Thanks for joining us in the briefing room. I hope you enjoyed this conversation with the people shaping our national security and future capability. If you liked what you heard, please follow the show, share it with a friend, and join us next time for more stories and insights from the front lines of innovation. Until then, stay curious, stay informed, and keep building the future.